March 1933. A British couple leaves Srinagar, chasing a dream route through the Himalayas. But heavy snow, avalanches, buried villages, and blizzards turn their journey into a test of survival, before leading them to the hidden valleys of Ladakh and beyond.
It's 2:20 a.m. I'm still buried in the Himalayan Club Journals, century-old field notes from the Himalayas. It's like diving deep into the documented history of the Himalayas from the early 1900s. The journals cover everything, from indigenous wisdom, cultural myths, to epic expeditions and groundbreaking discoveries. These forgotten stories are brought to life by synthetic voices in the Himalayan Journals podcast. Subscribe, zone out, binge, and pass it to a fellow mountain junkie.
On the last day of March 1933, A.P.F. Hamilton and his wife left Srinagar, bound for Ladakh. They had long dreamed of this journey, hoping to take a new route, but the heavy winter had left only the Zojila open across the Great Himalayan range. The weather looked uncertain, and the snow, unusually heavy that year, began only 2 miles beyond Gund and did not leave them until Lamayuru, 130 miles away. At Baltal, at the foot of the Zojila, light snow was fallen, and the rest house lay completely buried. At 3 in the morning they were called, and though snow still fell, the coolies were ready to move. The calm wind gave them courage, for it was not the snowfall they feared, but the avalanches that came when gales swept the cliffs. By afternoon they reached Mechoy. The next day a blizzard rose, yet the party pressed on to Matayan, where the villages lived buried under snow, their animals and fowls enduring months of confinement. At Lamayuru they stepped at last onto brown earth. The fields were alive with labor, every man, woman, child, and beast working under the guidance of Buddhist lamas. The march to Leh was mostly without incident, except at Basgo, where they found the village overcome by drink. Yet the chowkidar of their grove was sober enough by dawn to ask for bakshish. The monastery above Basgo, standing over the clustered houses, struck them as one of the most picturesque places in Ladakh. Crossing the Indus at Spitok, they spent 4 days in the Rumbak Nula after Shapu. On 21st April they reached Leh, where Bishop Peter of the Moravian Mission had ground flour and supplied potatoes for their journey, along with eggs that kept for 6 weeks. The return route weighed heavily on their minds. They considered crossing the Great Himalaya into Lahul by the Baralacha La, though locals warned them of hardships and failures. Still, they decided to try, and the Tahsildar arranged for a capable man to help secure transport after their time in Hanle. Following the Indus, they camped at Ugu Nula among planted groves of poplar, where chiffchaffs and magpies called. Ibex roamed nearby, and they saw one female barrel living oddly among 32 male ibex, acting as watch and nearly spoiling the stock. They also witnessed a Ladakhi archery match, where drinking barley chang seemed to dull the aim. On the 30th of April, they left Ugu, and in 5 marches reached Nima. Here the Indus cut through deep gorges, the granite of Ladakh pressing against the shale and slate of Zaskar. Crossing the Sangpochila, they camped at Mankang on the Hanle River. The valley held Kiang, a yak, and ponies grazing on coarse grass, and they saw black-necked cranes. In Hanle village, the Lambadar proved helpful, and for 24 days they hunted in almond blocks 2 and 4. Their shikari promised good ova salmon, but after 17 days they secured only 1 head, 40.5 inches, near the Tibetan border, to Tibetan shepherds and their dogs roamed the same pastures, driving flocks and game alike. Gazelle, barrel, and partridges were common, and once they saw a lynx. Snowcock and choughs were noted, black storks by the Indus, and fish in the Hanle River, which their cook caught with stones. By June, they moved south toward Somorari. At Kiangdum, they saw flocks of gulls, sand plovers, geese, and more cranes. On the 4th of June, they reached Karzok, the only village of Rupshu, and met Sunam Wanchup, the Ladakhi, promised by the Tahsildar. He agreed to guide them toward Kulu. At Thugje, Yakman hesitated, but after much change and persuasion, agreed to accompany them. Soon after, some deserted, but new men were found. Their route led them to the Merang La. The ascent was steep, the snow heavy, and the Yaks failed. Loads were carried by hand over the 17,700-foot pass, while new transport was raised in the Sarap Valley. Sunam Wanchup succeeded in finding fresh men and animals, and the party pressed quickly to Kenlung at the foot of the Baralacha La. This time, they started at 1 in the morning, the Yaks ahead, extra men carrying their tent and bedding. By 8, they were safely across the 16,000-foot pass, the Yaks already descending into Lahul. On the 16th of June, they reached the PWD bungalow at Patseo, then Kai Lang the next day. After saying farewell to Sunam Wanchup, they moved quickly over the Rotang and reached Manali on 22nd June. From there, they motored to Utpahali, then continued along the Kulu-Simla road. On 26th June, they arrived in Simla, having covered 430 miles from Hanle in 26 days, with only brief halts. It had been, in Hamilton's words, a good trip, though far more strenuous than they had imagined.